Hi, I'm Rachel Umdahl, and today we're going to be listening to a presentation about the United Nations Rights of the Child. I am unfortunately having to video record this due to the current pandemic that is sweeping the entire globe, the coronavirus or COVID-19, and unfortunately the Skagit Valley campus has been closed now for about a week and we've transferred to completely online classes, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but here we are. This has actually afforded me the wonderful opportunity to give you this presentation in my own kitchen, and not having to wear pants is also a great plus. So, welcome to the party. It's gonna be a blast. Prepared what I hope is at least a relatively amusing presentation for you, and I hope you get a laugh. Well, y'all are probably also sitting at home eating a good snack or something. I don't know, but here we go for the United Nations Rights of the Child. We all believe, I hope at least, that children should be afforded some level of rights, some level of decency, some assurance that the life that they love and hold, it will be protected by some governing body that can back up what they have to say. So there was a summit in 1995 that met together to discuss and write down all 54 articles that they thought related to the rights of the child, and we'll get to it, but Article 1 defines it first as someone under the age of 18, just to give a definition, even though most countries already had that in their law or in some form or another. They go into a description for us. So moving into the core principles of the United Nations, first and foremost, they would always like to be the most fair and non-discriminatory that they can be. And so they have stated that all children have rights and that the four core principles of this convention that they held were non-discriminatory, that the devotion to the best interests of the child were at the heart, and that all children have the right to life, survival, development, and the fourth and final one was respect for views of the child. So going right into this, the first 5 principles probably could have just been a part of the very long, several pages preamble that they wrote down. So most like any formal document, that there is a preamble in the beginning that goes into why we are here, what caused this to happen, who's included, what different policies will be discussed in the following articles, and the first 5 are just laying a groundwork for the rest of the 54. Article 1, again, is just a child is someone under the age of 18. Article 2 goes into further detail about the non-discriminatory stance that the United Nations tries to take on any issue that is brought forth. For the child, they specifically state that color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinions held by either the family or the state that the child is a part of, their national, ethnic, social origin, property, disability, birth, or any other status afforded to that child should not play a part in any case brought forward to the UN that has to do with any violation of the rights that will be stated in the coming articles. So they tried their darndest to include anything they could think of that would negate any right that a child could have. They believe that anyone should have certain rights, just as we in the United States afforded certain rights to all of our anyone in our country that under the constitutional law. So Article 3 goes into that the best interests of the child shall be the primary consideration of any of the upcoming articles, and that they will be afforded to the child anywhere they are, as long as that child is in a country that has signed the treaty. If you happen to be in one of the 3 countries that hasn't signed this, then tough luck, you kind of are screwed. If something gets brought forward, then they can just kind of laugh and pass you off to the side because they don't have to care because your country didn't care enough to sign the article for you. Sorry. Anyway, going into Article, 4, that they do everything possible in state legislation and possibly on an international level to maintain these articles. But again, only if your country signed. We'll get into which countries didn't later. There are only 3 of them, but I'm pretty sure you can guess where I'm going with this comment. So they included the international level in case they absolutely have to. Their main wish is that they won't, because again, they're really just trying to cover their butts if something happens, is really what's going on. Article 5, the last of the articles that should have been included in the preamble, is that they are going to respect parents and or guardians and the roles that they play in upbringing children. So yes, children have rights, but we also need to look at what their parents are doing, what their family is doing, and respect any social or cultural differences that may occur, as long as they do still fall under taking care of the children. So after all of this, we are going to get into actual children's rights. So starting Article 6, we're already 6 in, and we are just now getting to the right to live. So if mommy and daddy love each other enough and you end up being born, you have certain rights up until you hit 18, and then some of those change because apparently children's rights aren't universal rights for everybody. Who knew? I mean, they're people too, but since you're under the age of 18 and still developing, apparently they are different than those of the adults, except why? I don't know. I only saw minor differences, mostly in wording, but at the same time, I don't understand why they couldn't have just included rights of humans in general, anyone that is still living in any of the countries that have signed, to include children as well. But it took them 6 articles to get there, but they do say that you are afforded the right to life. Getting into Article 7, you are, after you are born, required to be given a name. We don't want you referred to as it or they or just passed off a number, because again, that's degrading, that's not nice, that's not any way to treat a living being. So you are afforded under Article 7 of the United Nations Rights of the Child the right to a name, the right to a nationality, so you are afforded the right to belong to a certain nation and have a home, and you are also afforded the right to know your biological parents and to live with them as long as it is appropriate and they aren't abusive and it is a healthy place for you to be. So it goes into all of that, but also Article 7 kind of says the same thing. It's just more along the lines of protecting those rights and making sure that your name, nationality, family, your biological background, your genetics, they are all protected, and they will all be they will all be given to you if the need arises, and that you will be able to take care of yourself and have a sense of self and being, and know that you are your own person who has their own rights afforded to them. Moving on into Article 9, we get into you're not supposed to take kids away from parents. I hope everyone knows that. And I do understand they had to write it down because they already felt the need to write down all of these. So, no, we're not supposed to take you away from mom and dad. But again, that also goes into, unless the parents are abusive, then we really don't want to take them away we want to take them away from their family and either give them to it says, nearest relation, or if I believe it says a dire case, you are afforded a representative of the state that you will live with until such a time that they can find someone vaguely related to you that they can pass you off to. So, right, Article 9 also goes into the right to due process, but due process also refers to both sides of this story. If the child or a family member or a neighbor, someone who knows the family, has reported an act of violence or abuse or neglect against a certain child, and they report it, then it needs to be brought before, beginning with local courts and working their way up the system. And if it gets to an issue that is big enough and important enough to involve the United Nations and this treaty, then both sides are allowed to share their side of the story. So that is the child along with their parent or guardian or whoever it was that was reported to be abusive towards them. And if afterwards they have been deemed unworthy to continue parenting their child and they will be removed from one or both parents, they are still under Article 9 given the right to maintain direct contact with their parents if they so choose, and if the state sees that it won't be detrimental to the child's continued health and upbringing. So they are guaranteed the right that they will maintain contact with both biological parents. And yes, it goes into if one of the parents ends up being detained by the state, so they end up going to a jail or they end up being sent to their own home country or home state, then you will still be allowed contact with them until the end of the trial, as long as it isn't seen as detrimental to that child's health. You are guaranteed the right to maintain a family. That is something that is afforded to every child. And so moving into Article 10, it is still talking along the same lines of making sure that kids aren't being abused. They are afforded the right to a healthy home, but it goes more into humane treatment of both the child and of the child's family if there is a case that needs to be brought before the state. And that it goes further into direct contact rights with parents if for some reason they either reside in a different country or that is where their nationality lies and they were just, for whatever reason, in that country, the case has been presented on a visa or some other form of passport or what have you, that they have been living in the other state even though it is not of their nationality. The UN covers that child's right to still visit their parent and have a relationship with them as long as it is healthy to the child. So those are only the first 10 articles of what is a very long, very drawn out, rather wordy summary of the rights that are afforded to anyone under the age of 18 in any country or state that has signed this treaty that was brought forth, written out, ratified by the United Nations, and is still upheld 25 years later now. So there are only 6 through 40 of these articles are actually concerned with rights of the child. The first 5, as we discussed, are mostly just things that should have been included in the preamble to this document, and then the last 14 articles are talking about the different hierarchies included in the UN, who gets to ratify what, if different adjustments need to be made to this at any time, what have you with that. So most of this document was very good ideas brought forward by some of the brightest minds in between several different countries at the time, and it was brought forward with the most pure intentions, I believe, at least, with wanting to protect the youth of the entire world, that I don't believe could come from anything negative that is wanted. They wanted to protect the most vulnerable of all of us, but at the same time, they can only protect the youth of the countries that choose to sign the treaty. And it's been in effect for 25 years. It is still open for countries to sign if they so choose, and any constitution or governing body can go along with any countries as long as they want to be included in it. And I personally don't see a reason why a country wouldn't ratify it as long as they had the intentions, the best intentions at least, of the youth of the future of their country at heart. Unfortunately, though, there are 3 countries still that haven't chosen to sign this treaty, and we are on the same list as Somalia and South Sudan. Yeah! But actually, there isn't a but. I have nothing positive to say about this. Neither of the other 2 countries on this list are known for their positive treatment of any of their citizens. And it is sad and so disappointing that the country that I live in and call home doesn't see fit to take care of its youth and its future. And we've had ample opportunity. We've had several different presidencies and rotations through our highest governing bodies that could have brought this forward to be ratified throughout the United States, but we don't seem to give a shit. We really don't. We would care more about making money. We care more about the good of major corporations that are monopolizing our economy, society, and we would rather outsource anything that we do to another country and not have to deal with it. So I think it's shameful that we would rather care more about paychecks of the people that run everything behind curtains and ratify things that are in best interests of people that supply them with money than the future of the country. That's sad to me. I don't understand why a country that is so set on being this forward-thinking, wonderful place that everyone should want to emulate, why we wouldn't want to be or play a bigger part of the United Nations, and especially something that protects the weakest among us, our children, who don't have a voice for themselves. They can't vote. They can't go out and live by themselves. They can't get a job. They are entirely dependent on their families. They are entirely dependent on the state they live in and the government that controls their day-to-day life and anything that they have access to. It's shameful that we haven't included ourselves in this. It would hold us accountable for many different things that are currently a problem. And so, to, I guess, summarize everything that has been covered in just the first 10 articles that I have briefly discussed today, that children should be afforded the right to a name, a sense of self, a nationality. They should be afforded the right to a good life, free from abuse, free from neglect, that they should be afforded the right to a family, but not just a family that they are biologically related to, a family that they feel safe in, that is a healthy environment to grow up in. Several of the articles that the United Nations have ratified and that most every country in the world has signed guarantee a child what, if is they're followed in every country, sounds like a fairly decent childhood that many, many children in the United States would do so much for. And it is shameful that our government chooses to not care about the least among us, those with the least opportunity to share their voice. I think that the United States should include themselves in something that has intentions that seem to be this good and have stood for a quarter of a century at this point. We need to do more for our people. We need to do more for our children. We need to give a damn. Thank you for listening.